who is Steven Goh and what is mig33?
Okay. I started programming when I was very young, when I was 7. I started working in Fortran and punch cards, showing my age, and then took a detour into stockbroking investment banking. Built a first company in Australia, raised $14 million, and I got it for my company. Built out mig33, started that in 2003, launched the product in 2006.
I think they can't hear you, so let me just do an adjustment for you. So you have to tilt this to here, this, alright. Do a mic test.
Fantastic.
Much better?
Much better?
Alright, thank you so much for the feedback. I saw your hand. Alright, let's go on.
I went and built out started building out mig33, beginning with my co-founder in 2003. We launched mig33 at the end of 2005 and 2006. Grew rapidly, did a Series A with on Redpoint, went to Silicon Valley, built the company out. Became very clear that the company grow from here and had to move in Asia. So 2 years ago, we moved the company from Silicon Valley to Singapore and had continuing success here. I think over that time, I've done a couple of hundred capital raisings. I've raised over $100 million for other people, including myself. I've raised maybe $70 million for companies that I've directly managed myself.
Right, wow. So there are a lot of things that you can say. So you moved from Silicon Valley to Singapore.
Yeah.
How long has that been?
It's 2 years and 3 months now.
2 years and 3 months?
Yeah.
So that's pretty long. So in your opinion, right, you have experience in Silicon Valley at the same time as Singapore. So what is the difference?
I think having built a company in Australia, a few other places, Asia, Silicon Valley, I think there's an ambient environment in Silicon Valley of a very large experimental advertising industry, which allows for the experimentation around consumer internet experiences, and that helps keep the market buoyant. The ecosystem in Silicon Valley is great around if it's angel funding to Series A through to all the way through the exits. It's a very sausage factory environment there. They're very systematic about how companies are found, how they're nurtured, keep built. Companies are accelerated and ultimately find those exits. And that works very well for the Silicon Valley environment. Coming out here to Asia, you straight away have to take away the assumption that there is a digital advertising industry here, because there isn't. I think digital ad spend in the US, the global advertising industry is about 600 billion in size. 50% of that is in North America alone. 20 to 25% of that is experimental and digital. When you come here to places like Singapore, I think digital expenditure is about 7% of spend. And then it's non-experimental. So straight away, if you're trying to build a consumer internet experience here in Asia, the Asia tends to look more like China than it does like Europe.
Right.
And then there's a whole range of this basket of other monetization strategies. It is not.
Okay, so it's about raising capital. Let's talk about capital raising. So you raised more than $100 million so far. So for budding entrepreneurs, and I think we have more than 70 VCs here today at Startup Asia.
Congratulations, welcome.
Oh, welcome everyone. So for a budding entrepreneur, what are some tips to meet up with, before meeting up with investors? What should they do? What should they prepare for meeting up with investors?
So no disrespect to the 70 VCs who are here. Venture isn't your only option. I think you've got to be very, very clear what it is that you want in your business. And it actually starts with you as the entrepreneur. You've got to be very clear what you want. You need to be able to get the Hollywood lifestyle out of your head, because that might work in small parts of Silicon Valley, but probably not just one for the rest of the planet. It starts with what do you want. And then from there, you've got to remember when you're raising money, it's not your money. You might actually have to return the capital at some point in time. You might have to deliver your shareholders a return of the money. And based on that, there is this universe then of different ways that you can raise money. If it's either by business partners, deliver either strategic value or some other value in the relationship. If it is by your customers, but very often I think there's been some great mobile services here in Singapore, there's actually a lot of small SMEs here in Singapore which can fund, incentive fund or be involved in mobile consumer experiences. There's other things funding. When it comes to venture, the reality of venture is the marketing source of venture. You've got to remember what the statistics are of venture. And if you live with the statistics and survival rates and the payoff rates of venture.
Well, what are the statistics?
So most venture capital firms will, they make the presumption that 1 in 10 companies might make a fund, 2 or 3 might return money, and the rest of them go broke. The actual statistics are actually far worse. You've got to remember that in Silicon Valley there are 1,200 venture capital firms. They're making 3 to 5 investments a year each. There's maybe several thousand venture-backed sort of consumer-led startups which you see in Silicon Valley at any point in time. You only ever hear about 50. So straight away, the fact that you hear about 50 out of several thousand, that itself tells you what the real statistics are like. It's not pretty. So getting venture back is one thing. Actually getting to the point where you're actually talking about is another. Delivering return is even rarer. So yeah.
Right. So maybe let's do. Can you give us 3 points? Like, for example, let's say I am a totally new entrepreneur, and I have a great product, right? A prototype, great idea, great innovation, and I want to meet up with an investor. What should I prepare?
If you're going down the venture route, you really do need to prove that you're that you've got a minimum viable product. Customers love you. It's one thing to say that people like you. You really do want to show that you've got a product that people love. It's got to be a product that can scale genuinely, ideally through viral means. There's very few examples of a successful venture-backed startup which has not grown viral. And then you need to be able to show that there's value in venture. That is, if the venture capitalist makes an investment in you, that you're willing to have a team built around you, that there is a pathway to experimentation and acceleration. And then after all that, you've got to have a reasonable chance to be able to deliver a 10x return. So, and that's, the sum of those things that may be a right venture. If that's not what you think is going to be in the mix, then there is a range of other options, and there's nothing negative about taking any of those other options. But you've got to really have it in your mind very clearly to decide exactly what you want. And it starts with you. For every entrepreneur, it really starts with what do you really want.
Right. So I think when I speak to, this is just my opinion, right? So when I speak to a lot of different entrepreneurs, at least in Asia, right? A lot of them, they see raising capital as like a success.
Yeah, that's. I think that's the wrong way to think about it. Raising money is only half the transaction. It's the exit, which is the other half of the transaction. You haven't finished your relationship, or you haven't delivered. Raising money is just. It's like if I'm trying to make money on a house, if I buy a house, that's great. You only make money when you sell it. And ultimately, raising money is hard enough. Exiting is much, much harder. And once again, some of that's statistics. The statistics are not going to
Okay. So another thing is that a lot of startups in Asia, they cannot generate revenue. But usually the product can be awesome. You can have an awesome product. But think about raising money and then generating revenue. Generating revenue is a huge problem. And is this a problem that you face at mig33?
So mig33, and as a parallel to Tencent in China, we realized very early in the piece that we would have to find an innovative way to find monetization around prepaid. So we built a community of prepaid service. We feel like the enthusiasm and energy that is in our community for them to build out our prepaid service. So for mig33, we monetize in 150 countries, like predominantly Indonesia, but Nepal has just overtaken Indonesia for us. But I get money out of Afghanistan, Somalia, Sudan, Libya with wars on, Syria, with this long string of failed states, Maldives, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Hong Kong, Taiwan. We get money from 150 countries, which is fantastic. I think for most companies here, those startups that I've seen here, or mentored or procedural institutes, there is a presumption that they're building a business model which is a shadow of something they see out of Silicon Valley. And of course, it keeps coming back to this thing that if you take away the assumptions out of Silicon Valley from here to Asia, there is no experimental ad expansion. In the US, you might have a product with 10, 20, 30,000 daily actives. You might be able to get $200,000, $300,000 of experimental ad budget for you to go and see if you can grow that. There is just no way you're going to get $200,000 or $300,000 of experimental ad expenditure here in Singapore, but not any other part of Southeast Asia. It's a structurally different environment. And you just have to, on one hand, it's harder, you've got to think creatively, but having said that, that's the opportunity in Asia. You know, this has to be one of the most exciting areas for consumer internet opportunity on the planet. And it's just another problem that's going to be solved. It's going to be solved differently to the North American model. It's going to be solved differently to the Chinese model. It's going to be solved differently to the Japanese model.
Okay, so basically mig33, you guys sell virtual goods.
Yeah.
Right? So selling virtual goods is not something that is innovative. Everyone sells virtual goods, right? But the thing that is very innovative about mig33 is the way that you guys collect payment.
Yeah, I think you're building a business. You've got a range of different ways to finance it. You either go to someone who's going to rent your user base, an advertiser. You're building valuable experiences amongst your user base in the case of virtual goods. And for us, not only are we aligning for virtual goods, but our users solve the last mile of cash collection problems. So for us, this is like Tupperware meets social gaming. Right. If you imagine that for a moment, that is
right. Because, I mean, the most interesting thing about that we can learn from mig33, at least from my point of view, is that you are able to monetize in countries like Bangladesh, Maldives, Afghanistan, and how the hell do you do that?
You cannot underestimate the entrepreneurialism of the last little fella on the planet. Bearing in mind how entrepreneurial, you know, now we build a platform which allows us to unlock that entrepreneurialism. Allow you, the last person on the planet to entertain each other, and in the course of that entertainment, collect the cash. Once again, it's funny this, but it's that Tupperware Amway model, actually funnily enough, it's
the Amway model.
So, I mean, if you look at part of our business, it's about, it's the platform that allows, and we're on this very large pivot right now, that if I can go to South Asia, if I can go to India, and I can tell 1 million people in India that you can double your money with your mobile phone, entertaining your friends all day, if I can go tell 1 million people in India that, you'll get 1 million people trying it. Yeah. That's what we can do. That's the opportunity.
Okay. So you raised a lot of capital from mig33.
We raised 38 million.
Okay. So how long did it take to sort of like, you know, find a right sweet spot business model?
When I exit, then I will tell you about the sweet spot business model. We didn't want to do a Series A until we could prove hints of monetization, which is what we did. We had a fantastic Series A. The extra revenue was a huge win. We were one of the very first Australian top-tier venture capital investment. We found it very hard to build a team, a relevant team, to continue that momentum in California. In part, the US is a magical place. Building an emerging market play is probably not right for Silicon Valley. And ultimately, they got born out of ECM investors in Asia. We're still experimenting around it. We're in this pivot at the moment. We're you'll just have to watch it for the next 12 months.
So, you know, for entrepreneurs who have raised money, so what is the, like, I mean, I know this is a tough question, and it's probably not the best form of question. So for entrepreneurs who have raised money, how should they experiment their business model in Asia?
I think you've got to start by letting go the assumption that this, and following the North American blogs, that is number one. Completely leaving that. Larger Asia is going to look more like variations of China. First with Indonesia leading, and then there's a very good chance, like you, that India will look very similar to the Indonesian success story. There's no true outright successes coming out of Indonesia as yet, but these markets have become successful in their own right. I think when it comes to monetization and collecting the cash, you need to stop looking completely elsewhere for your own solutions. Your solutions are in your back door. It's about understanding consumers around you as to how do they really buy. And every market is different. Every last person buys is different in every market. And who wants to reach you in that buying process? And then once again, you've got a very different set of ecosystems. Every company's got this.
So you mentioned about you are pivoting right now. I mean, sorry, mig33 is pivoting right now.
Yeah.
So what is that pivot?
The thing about building a social entertainment service is having the right relevant conversational tools, which are competitive and relevant in the market at the moment. And for a while, we were very successful in chat rooms, which is a parallel to the Tencent model, right? Chat groups or whatever. We're now moving to mini-blog. We launched mini-blog about 2.5 weeks ago. It was some great early success numbers around mini-blog. Right? We're wiring now the infrastructure of mig33 around mini-blog as a media product. It's been the right conversational tool, and we just have to watch this space.
Okay, watch the space. So can you share with us more about what is this mini-blog? From what I know from you is that this mini-blog works somehow like Singapore Weibo, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I think it's the same way that Sina Weibo, in our view, is the better Twitter. It's far more conversational, media-rich, playful. It's got all the gamified elements of Wi-Fi and some of the popular elsewhere. We're trying to build a better Weibo. We've had some great early results. We think of it like, once again, I see this Weibo with the monetization model. That's what we're doing.
How many active users do you have so far for the mini-blog?
We launched it a few weeks ago. We had an early spike. We got up to 1 million daily actives, which is a great number.
1 million daily actives?
Yeah, which is a great number out of the gate, just the first couple of weeks. The numbers eased back since then, and we're building out. We've got a fantastic launch in Indonesia. We've got all the celebrities in Indonesia coming onto the platform. Last weekend, we had a national mig33 day where several thousand mig33 users came up onto the day. It was great dancing in the mosh pit with them.
So 1 million daily active users.
Yeah.
How do you define active users? They've
got to log in and do something.
Oh, okay. Right. So why the change? Why do you want to change to a mini blog? Why do you want to pivot to a mini blog? Is it because that you want to generate more revenue in that way?
No, I think it comes back to what is the relevant. I mean, so much of social networking is about having a relevant conversation. Like you've got to be a place where people want to talk, where people play, where even in your gaming experiences, the social framework creates relevance to your gaming experience. You can't have games running in isolation aren't social games. But actually, to be social is actually got to have a social framework to have a right conversation. And then chat rooms used to be great for a time, but it's synchronous. People can log in at the end there at the same time. It's like JTV and handsets 3 years ago were very different. The world's now comprised of very different handsets, and the style at which people are talking and playing has changed. And this is about mig33 having a relevant, competitive, conversational tool as our lead across a broader footprint. We used to be in JTV predominantly, now it's brought into BlackBerry, Android, BlackBerry, JTV, blah, blah, blah. It's about making mig33 contemporary.
So mig33 has 50 million users.
So 55 million registered users. We've got a piece of about 1.7 million daily actives across the service. And mini-blog, which was launched, has hit a peak.
Okay, so I just want to ask a little bit more about Indonesia. There are a lot of startups here. They are very interested in Indonesia. And then mig33 seems to have a lot of traction in Indonesia. So out of the 50 million, if I'm not wrong, 25 million?
It's about half of our active user base in Indonesia. Okay. We are just about to take over more than half of our daily actives earlier. Just about to take over a million daily actives in Indonesia.
So how did you build such a huge traction in Indonesia? What attracts Indonesia to use mig33?
I think there's a few things. One of them was at a time when we initially grew in Indonesia, as an SMS replacement service around chat and IM, working on your phones, grew very dramatically there. I say this with Opera. I think Opera is the best browser for your old crappy phone. It's a way of upgrading your old phone to this browser. For a period, mig33 was the #1 chat application you could get on a JTB phone. It still is. It's the most compatible thing you get a JTB phone. It's great. Like I said, and in that early phase, that allows us to build an initial user base, build communities on that. Great. And the world's changing. And mig33 is changing.
Right. So using mig33 as a case study, right? So in your experience and opinion, what are the few takeaways, for the auto entrepreneurs in the floor? What are the few takeaways for folks who want to expand to Indonesia?
So Indonesia is not. Indonesia looks like early China, more well. Indonesia looks like the Zara of China, rather than any other market. It's an older JDD environment. It's flooded with Chinese handsets, MPK, very low cost Android handsets. These are not Android handsets which are going to run HTML5 anytime soon. It is a different market. There's no direct portability. There's also very little implied monetization. And very recently, a few months ago, all the operators turned off the content industry, which is also single-handedly destroyed the music industry as well. It comes back to what are then the issues around monetization. If you look at China very early in the piece, QQ went through this. They built their own prepaid channel rather than deal with the operators. Just complete credit to the guys on QQ for going to build their prepaid channel. QQ Pay has been a mind-blowing success story in China as a result of that. There's yet to be an equivalent in Indonesia. So the cash collection model in Indonesia remains elusive. That's why our version model is so well.
Right. So for Indonesia, are people paying or are they just using the service? Are they buying virtual goods from mig33?
They are in mig33. It's a fantastic market for us because of the hole in the market when it comes to payments. And it's not just the whole market, there's a number of unique structural issues with the way that market works. So we're monetizing Indonesia well. It's a profitable market for us in its own right. I think it's going to be very interesting.
So I think one of the biggest problems about generating revenue, right, is that even if you have a perfect, not say perfect, at least on paper plan, perfect paper plan, to create a business model, but in reality is that the market over here is so fragmented, right? And for example, in Indonesia, the payment system sucks.
Yeah.
All right. And
don't mince words.
Yeah, basically it sucks. So it's so hard to collect money in Indonesia. So even if you have a good plan to monetize your business, it's so hard to collect payment.
Yeah, there's only 20 million banknotes. So structurally, forget about anything remotely looking like a PayPal in that country. There's 150 million mobile prepaid consumers. Having said that, prepaid as a channel is locked out in part because of what's happening for $1 billion of infrastructure. Even when it was working, it wasn't really working. And when you look at digital advertising in the country, I think the total spend in digital advertising last year was about 40 million. And this year's going to be 50.
You're talking about Indonesia, right?
Yeah, 50 million. 50 million is just too small.
Right, exactly. Right. So, in your experience, how should we, as entrepreneurs, collect payment? Even though, creating a business model is not a problem, but feeding the business model into the country and meeting the problem, and overcoming the obstacles of collecting payments and government and law. So, in your opinion, and in your experience, what are the few things that entrepreneurs should think of?
So the two things are, in the Silicon Valley model, there are a lot of pluggable businesses. You find a lot of businesses that are built unique for purpose, and then someone else comes along and monetizes you, or you plug into something else. You look at the Chinese model, however, you find that there's a lot of these companies which they've had to build everything in the end, and they've built their own payment and monetization infrastructure, their ad industry, ad engines, their own KQ use case. When you look at Silicon Valley, you might have Google with 3 product successes. You look at QQ's got like 20. It's just stunning. And I think here in Asia, you're just going to have a very different attitude to monetization. You're just going to have to, in many cases, going to do this. Or alternatively, you can come and use mig33 credits. And we have this economy. And we're always looking for more things to sell inside of mig33. So that's also possible.
Okay, so what is your exit plan?
We're going to start by being fabulous. And look, you know, I've done a few hundred capital raisings. I've raised some $100 million. I've had, for a lot of the other companies I've worked with, it's been an exit process. I think when you build a company, for me, you know, for me personally, I'm only interested in building a company that I can ultimately IPO. If something else happens along the way, great. But the number one way to underwrite shareholder value is by IPO. It's similarly thinking about a company that can build a scale that can get you an IPO. If something else happens along the way, great. That's how I think about it.
Okay, so for entrepreneurs who have raised capital, generate revenue, so in your opinion, they shouldn't be thinking about exiting. I mean, at least not like getting acquired by someone.
Yeah, I think you do need to think about, well, if you're going down the venture route, you do need to be thinking about ultimately what does your exit look like. Because you're actually building a business that's ultimately going to deliver, has a reasonable chance to deliver a 10x return to your venture shareholders. That's the basis of making an investment. It's not your money. You have a commitment to at least have a very good go at trying to make that happen. If that's not, you're not going down the venture route with something else, you know, it keeps coming back to this thing like, what do you really want to do as an entrepreneur? It starts with you. It's amazing. Most entrepreneurs are fairly self-directed individuals. So you don't solve that first thing about what you really want to do. Everything else, sure.
Last question. Has anyone tried to acquire mig33?
I'm not looking.
Come on. Okay, thank you so much. Thanks a lot, Steven.
Okay. Thank you.
Steven Goh, mig33, excellent. Singapore's own. That's great. Hey, I found out something yesterday that I didn't actually know, is that it is Willis Wee's 26th birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Join me. Happy birthday, dear Willis. Happy birthday to you. We're going to take a break. We're back at 11 o'clock.
Thank you.
Willis Wee, 27 Wonder Kid. See you guys at 11. Thank you.